Hi, good afternoon to everybody. Please confirm that the slide is visible. Start right.
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Sir, it is.
Thank you. So we'll complete this the discussion on SWOT analysis and then have the remaining two teams 3 and 4, make their presentation. With that, we'll wind up this afternoon session. Okay, so as I mentioned, SWOT analysis is a management tool, an analytical approach to assess an organizations. When I say organization, it could be any type of an entity. It could be a company, could be a university, could be any group which is working with a specific any professional group that is working with a specified set of objectives, any industry or any industry segment, etc. Could be even for the country, for a group of countries, so anything. So for any such entity, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the combined analysis of them, and with the purpose of realigning the activities, realigning the resources in such a way as to tackle, as to tap the opportunities and to making use of the opportunities. This is that's a approach in, that's a role of SWOT analysis in strategic management. Now, specifically, what's the purpose of it? I guess we have already touched upon why the organization has to do a SWOT analysis. It's to develop strategies that can provide growth, as well as it can help to identify means to mitigate the threats and compensate for the weaknesses of the organization. So it's not that it's everything, but SWOT is an important tool, but it's not the only one tool in the whole strategic management process. And can be certainly used to assess the capabilities, resources, and then the importance of partnerships, which are existing or which are potential ones, etc., so that it can provide an insight to the organization's overall business model based on a holistic approach. Okay, now let's look at these terms with focus: strengths, weakness, etc. Weakness, etc. Strength, as I mentioned, is something internal to the organization, and usually it relates to things which it does well. So if it has a very skilled and well-trained labor force, it's a strength. If the organization has specific strength or specific knowledge in certain areas, say for example IT or infrastructure related to IT, that they are all internal assets of the organization, and they can all be considered as strength of the organization. And they are positive, favorable capacities, favorable in the sense favorable to the listed goals and objectives of the organization, and resources or skill set which can play an important role in achieving the goals of the organization, of the firm. And the strengths can be tangible in the sense we can measure them. That is, say for example, the in the case of companies, the cash flow. It's something which is measurable. The assets that it has in terms of money, monetary assets, they're all measurable and they can be quantified easily. At the same time, you can also have intangible strengths which probably cannot be easily quantified. So for example, the knowledge of the staff, or the level of training that they have gained, the perception of the society about their products, like in a sense the brand value. These are things which can be strengths of an organization, but you probably cannot quantify them easily. So strengths can be either tangible or intangible. In any case, they are internal to the organization. They are part of the resources that the organization has, and they are they can be considered as fully under the control of the organization. Uh, as opposed to that, weakness is something which is absence of peace, that is lacking in certain areas. So, for example, the staff strength is good, but the staff is not well trained, or the staff strength itself is not adequate, or the company doesn't have enough resources, or the company probably is not well equipped in terms of its infrastructure, or say maybe if the competition or the other companies in the same domain, if they are well equipped with, say, the issues related to cyber security, or say AI, artificial intelligence, etc. And if one particular company is lacking behind in that, whereas it can play an important role in its achieving the goals, then such lack of, or such shortfalls which are internal to the organization, again in relative to what the firm can achieve, that those can be referred to as weaknesses. So weaknesses can fall into any of these categories: lack of infrastructure, lack of training for the staff, attrition, for example, people keep moving their jobs. So lack of stability within the organization. They are all internal to the organization, and they can all be described. Probably a lack of leadership, not having a good management, lack of timely decisions, etc. They can all sort of impede the growth. They can all retard the progress of the company in achieving its goals, and they can all be considered as weaknesses of the organization. So, as we see, strengths and weaknesses both are internal to the firm. Now, as opposed, opposed to that, the external factors. Opportunity is something, a situation, a condition, an ambience, which can be made use of for the advantage of the organization. That is, which can be made use of favorably, which can be converted to a favorable system, which can help the organization achieve its goals. So, opportunity as opposed to strength. Opportunity is external to the organization. It is something which is, say, it's like an ambience where you have a potential which can be made use of. So you can make use of, you can grab those opportunities and grow. That is how the factors which are external to the organization, which can be made use of, are described as or categorized as opportunities. And threats are the opposite to them. The threats also are external, but then they are obviously, as the name indicates, something which could become a disadvantage for the firm in the short term or long term. That is the existence of, say, for example, the growing competition. Growing competition is an external factor. It's not under the control of the organization. At the same time, it could be with emergence of more and more players or more and more competition. Growth potential mitigated by other means. So, so those can be external, or in that for the organization. And it could be anything that is external to the company. Say, for example, government policies, which are most of the time they're not in the control of any given firm or company. So any changes which the organization, they can also all be considered as threats. Government policies, in fact, need not be always threats. In some cases, if there are reforms which are going to be favorable for a given company, they can be opportunities as well. Okay, so we have briefly looked at what is meant by strength, weakness, opportunity and threat in the context of SWOT analysis. So now we will try to see what it means for Indian aviation industry, because the topic here is SWOT analysis of Indian aviation industry. So the strengths. Transportation service. We have seen that already. That is the fastest growing transportation service. Now, air traffic. We have seen some numbers in the morning, which show a continuous trend in the last several years, and actually last several decades. Right, an increase in passenger traffic, and also there is growth of larger number of players. So overall, this is considered as the fastest growing transportation service now, as compared to particularly in Indian context, as compared to railways and road transport. Now we look at railways and road transport. They are growing. We are having more and more vehicles. We are having more probably more highways are being developed. Rails are in the process of being constructed, etc., or the existing rail lines being doubled and all that. But then the rate of growth is significantly lower than the growth in air traffic. That's particularly because you don't need other than airports, or when you have airports between two cities, you don't need to require any significant additional construction to have transport obviously require are more construction intensive. So in terms of the volume of traffic, the volume of vehicles, the fastest growing transportation service is aviation. So again, it's not in absolute terms. It is not in absolute terms. It's a rate of growth. Okay. The ability to expand, again, that also is a strength of the aviation sector. That is, you have more freedom to expand in terms of the number, in terms of the traffic, as compared to railways and road transport, because both railways, road transport, and marine transport, etc., are constrained by the available space on land and in ocean. So the ability to expand is also high in aviation industry. Highly trained staff, that is again, it's not in comparison, but absolutely, that is the availability of human skills, the availability to have having the means to train educated candidates. They are all good and well established in India. So we know we have a lot of skilled manpower. We have a lot of manpower. We have means for getting them trained as well. So highly trained staff, or the availability of trained staff, is a strength of Indian aviation industry. And then in general, the availability of human resources. So that is in India, you probably will never come across a situation where there are a lot of positions, but then you don't have enough people available in the market to hire from. It can actually, in some levels, it may be may have some difficulty, but not in general. So availability of human resources is, as of now, can be sort of taken for granted in India. So these are some of the strengths of Indian aviation industry. So note that when we say all these are strengths, these are all internal to the factors which are primarily in to make hiring, or the ability to choose between trained staff, or rather skilled staff. These are internal to the aviation industry and can be considered at an industry segment per se. We are not looking at a particular organization, so you should keep that in mind. We are not talking about, say, for example, we are not talking about Air India. We are not talking about SpiceJet. We are talking about in the aviation industry segment as a whole. The growth in traffic, etc. There are some numbers which I just put there, data from some of the recent surveys, which all show an increasing trend. Is actually the air passenger traffic in India in millions. Now, weakness. Again, fuel cost, highest level currently happens to be about 45% of the operating cost. Now, when we say weakness to the organization, not an external factor. Though fuel price is an external factor, as far as an operation of the industry is concerned, the utilization of fuel is an internal resource. So it has to be, the fuel has to be, or rather the price for that has to be paid. So in the operational sense, the cost of fuel becomes an internal factor, and that's the reason why it is considered as a weakness. Though the factors actually which drive the growth of fuel, etc., they may be external, but the internal factor, and that's obviously something which can affect the profitability significantly. Then inherently the aviation industry with all scope of expansion, etc., cannot expand by itself. It depends a lot on corporate travel. It depends a lot on personal leisure travel. It depends a lot on tourism, travel from other countries or within domestic regions, etc. So all these are factors which on which the industry depends for its growth. Again, we should be careful when we call these as weaknesses, though dependence on other industries for its growth. So these other industries are external, but then the dependence is inherent. So that's the reason why it is called as weakness. That is inherently the aviation industry by its nature is dependent on travel, the travel requirement of people. So the travel requirement in terms is dependent on the growth of tourism and the organization or corporate travel, etc. So it cannot probably grow by its aviation. And maintenance. India, probably we are now starting to make progress in that direction, that is making aero components. But even now, a lot depends on the maintenance is a major issue, and the fact that most of the time the parts have to be imported means that maintenance is expensive. So these are some of the factors which are identified as weaknesses of Indian aviation industry. Threats, again, factors which are purely external, the growth of fuel prices. So I think I should clarify why fuel shows in both places. Here, as I said, is as a day-to-day operation, as a factor or as something which is internal to the organization, procurement of fuel. It's a part of the operation, and that's why it shows the increased fuel prices gets counted as a weakness. At the same time, the factors which drive the fuel growth, they are external. So unpredictability of it, that is, so that's why it is this one of unpredictability of the rate of growth. That is, whenever an aviation company manages, or rather makes its plans for the say for the budget for the next year, makes its revenue estimate or makes its expenses, profitability, etc., for the next year or the subsequent years, it probably cannot predict accurately the growth of fuel prices because they are all external, the rate of fuel prices. So you will have to probably make use of best guesses, etc., and many times. So the unpredictability of fuel prices is a threat. It can affect the growth, the forecast, etc., of the company. Rupee depreciation, a perennial issue with Indian economy in general. and that applies to Indian aviation industry also, because the exchange rates keep increasing in terms of with respect to US dollars. So all domestic industries are affected by that. Actually, one industry that is favored by it is IT, where it is for the companies which are actually export oriented, because they are getting in terms of dollars. So the depreciation of rupee is sort of favorable to such companies. But domestic travel or Indian domestic segment of aviation industry is will have rupee depreciation as an external factor, which is a threat for its growth. Government policies, as I mentioned, could be either way. So government policies which could be adversely affecting the growth, they will have to be considered as a threat. And then, of course, increasing competition. We have seen that there is an emergence there is a trend of many players coming in. Of course, that has sort of slowed down because of many of these threats. But then new entrants are always a threat for the possible growth of the industry. And opportunities. Again, factors which are external and which can be made use of for the benefits of the industry. Growth in the number of people who opt to travel by air. That's we have discussed that in the morning. The middle income group which can afford to fly and which prefers to fly and which finds the advantages of air transport over railway and road transport, etc. So that is gradually growing, and not gradually, actually, it's rapidly growing. So this is an opportunity which the aviation industry can tap to meet its goals and objectives in terms of the growth. Increase in per capita income, that is also related to the first factor, the income that people can afford to spend for travel. So that's there's a continuous growth in per capita income. So that also will be favoring the growth in air travel. Government regulations, again, which favor FD investment, is a means by which you can get. So when the government says that more and more percentage can be invested by FDI, by foreign institutional investors or foreign investors in general, it means that you can have more fund within the industry, which can help the growth. So that's regulations related to the liberalization of foreign investment is a favorable external factor which can be tapped as an opportunity. And expansion of airports with private investment, that's another important thing, and particularly for the in the context of the coals. The importance of airports in the growth of aviation industry, it's quite obvious. So and from time to time, there is continuous emphasis on expansion of the infrastructure, the technology, the attractiveness of the airports by private industries. This will be dealing with in detail. That is private investment in airports, as opposed to the earlier trend where government used to be the sole player. Now we have more and more coming from more and more money coming from private and expansion of airports. So we'll be discussing that separately, but certainly that can be considered as an opportunity which the Indian aviation industry can make use of. I guess I'll stop. Any questions? This actually now we have touched upon all the four factors which can have an influence on Indian aviation industry in the perspective or from the perspective of SWOT analysis. Okay, so questions will go to the presentations. I guess group 3 can please give the presentation. They can share the uh,
Yes, sir.
screen. Yeah, start. Thank
Good, sir. Which can share.
you. Yeah, if visible, you can start. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Am I audible?
You are audible, yes.
Thank you. Smish, you can just put it in slideshow mode. Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is Sanjay from Team 3, and my fellow teammates are Sanjeev, Saptagiri, Seshad, Smish, Srivarshan, and Surya Prakash. So, as unlike the other two teams who have done the presentations in the morning, they have done on a specific aircraft and their technical specifications. But we have been allotted the topic something different, which is on a company. So, we are going to present on major milestones in the history of Boeing. So in this presentation, we'll be seeing about the introduction of Boeing, what is Boeing, what is this company all about, what do they do, their functions, their purposes, and their key roles and contributions in the aviation industry, and most importantly, we'll just take a glimpse through the history of Boeing and what are the major incidents, major instances in the history of this company that has caused it to revolutionize. I'm sorry for this. Transmission, next slide. So Boeing is the world's largest aerospace company and the leading manufacturer of commercial jetliners, defense systems, space and security systems, and it is a service provider of aftermarket support. So it's actually the America's biggest manufacturing exporter. It supports airlines and also it manufactures different aerospace systems, aircrafts and jetliners. So it is connected to, it is linked with the aviation industry. It contributes to the aviation industry as it expands its services to more than 150 countries, as it manufactures aircrafts, jets, and it also provides services of airlines so many countries, and it contributes to the aviation industry to these 150 plus countries. Uh, So this company also provides leasing and product support services. It is amongst the it's amongst the largest global aerospace manufacturers, and it is the third largest defense contractor in the world. It is based on the 2020 analysis of the revenue by United States. Boeing was founded in 1916 by William Boeing. The present corporation is the result of it Boeing being merged with Douglas in 1997, and the present chairman and CEO of Boeing being Philip Condit. Uh, the different products and services offered by Boeing include commercial and military aircraft, satellites, weapons, electronic and defense systems, launch systems, advanced information and communication systems, and performance-based logistics and training. Next slide, please. Yes. So more about Boeing. The corporate headquarters of Boeing are situated in Chicago. Uh, the corporate headquarters is situated in Chicago, and it employs more than 140,000 people across the US and in more than 65 countries. And this is how it contributes. Its key role lies in the aviation industry and the economy of these countries. So Boeing has three different business units. The first three different business units being commercial airplanes, defense, space and security, and Boeing Global Services. And these three being monitored by Boeing Capital Corporation. So we'll just see in detail about these three. So commercial airplanes, Boeing has been the premier manufacturer of commercial jetliners for decades. So so far they've manufactured 737, 747, 767, 777 and 787. So these many families of airplanes have been manufactured by Boeing, and the some of the new product development efforts include 787-10 Dreamliner and the 737 Max. So more than 10,000 Boeing-built commercial jetliners are in service worldwide in present, and which is almost half of the fleet of airplanes which are functioning. So this company offers the most complete family of free fighters, and about 90% of the world's cargo is being carried on board by the Boeing planes. When it comes to defense, space, and security, Boeing is a diverse. This section, the defense, space, and security of Boeing is most diversified and global organization. It functions on design, production, modification, service, and support of military aircraft, satellites, and autonomous systems that are used in the military. Then Boeing Global Services are the leading manufacturer for commercial and defense platforms. So they provide unparalleled support for the mixed fleets worldwide, and they deliver new products. That is, they are responsible for the innovation in products and design and the service solutions for commercial defense and space customers. These three units are being monitored by Boeing Capital Corporation. So this is like a funding agency. It's like a financing solutions for these three units. They work closely with commercial airplanes and defense, space, and security systems. These are about the units, three main units on how Boeing functions. And the functional organizations of Boeing include engineering and program management, technology and development program execution, advanced design manufacturing systems, safety, finance, quality, etc. So as mentioned here. Next slide. So this is the marks on the map where Boeing operators are located globally. Next. So let's just look into the glimpse on the history of Boeing. So the history of Boeing can be traced back to 1916, when the American merchant, that is William E. Boeing, he founded the Aero Products Company. So it was first named as Aero Products Company, and him along with another US Navy officer, who is Conrad Westerwelt, they developed a single engine two-seater airplane. So it was later on renamed as Boeing Airplane Company in 1917. They actually built flying boats for the Navy during the World War I. And they worked on selling the trainers, pursuit planes, observation craft, and torpedo planes for the Navy. And they also built some patrol bombers, military patrol aircraft, etc. In 1920s, this Boeing Airplane Company actually expanded into airmail services. And in 1928, William Boeing formed Boeing Airplane and Transport Corporation, which included both manufacturing and airline operations. So they started their airline operations by 1928. And the following year, this company was again renamed as United Aircraft and Transport Corporation, which acquired several aircraft makers. Among them, like an Avian, which is the Northrop aircraft, famous Stearman aircraft, and some other engine manufacturers like Pratt and Whitney, and propeller makers. In 1934, by the new act, that is the aircraft manufacturers were required to be sent off from this. So this company, again, the Boeing Airplane Company, again emerged as one of the best companies from the dissolution of United Aircraft and Transport. And the other two companies like United Aircraft Corporation and United Airlines also emerged out from Boeing. This is how they expanded their services. And prior to and during the World War II, they have developed few more airplanes. which are mentioned in the next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. So these are the different airplanes which were developed by the Boeing during and prior to World War II. Model 247 was a twin-engine monoplane. 314 was a flying boat which was developed for the Navy, US Navy at that time. And Model 307 Stratoliner was the first airline with the pressurized cabin. And the two Boeing's legendary bombers, the Flying Fortress and Super Fortress, were developed by Boeing during World War II, and the following two jet bombers were also developed during the World War II. I hand it over to Smish to take it further.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Sanjay said that he spoke about the merger that happened in the late 90s. Boeing was acquired, they acquired McDonnell Douglas. But before the acquisition, to a far greater degree than Douglas, Boeing has made key strategic decisions in its history, as much out of an idealized view of its self-identity and strategic pragmatism, so to speak. Boeing has a long history of taking huge gambles to build bigger and more advanced aircrafts. Usually, these gambles have paid off, and it's made Boeing a highly profitable company, more profitable than Douglas before the acquisition happened. So, to realize how this has happened, I'd like to point your attention towards their vision and how their CEO spoke about this vision in the mid 1940s. He spoke, and I quote, that Boeing is always reaching out to tomorrow. This can only be achieved by people who live, breathe, eat, and sleep what they are doing. I am associated with a large number of knowledgeable, dedicated people who eat, sleep, breathe the world of aeronautics. Man's objective should be opportunity for greater accomplishment and greater service. The greatest pleasure life has to offer is the satisfaction that flows from participating in a difficult and constructive undertaking. So the vision for the industry was to build or to take the industry into the jet age. Take for example their decision to make the 747. Sure, they had economic motives and they had non-financial motives as well, but it was largely built. It was because of their self-identity and a desire for profits. Yes, but it was also to make sure that they 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 compete with their competitors and they also innovate in the process. So their DNA was to realize how they've actually done it is to go a bit deep into their DNA and how and what they actually believe in. They believe in being the dominant player in commercial aircraft and to bring the world into the jet age, like I stated before. They have a history of building bigger and more advanced aircrafts. They want to pioneer aviation, build bigger, faster, advanced, better performing aircrafts, and push the envelope of aviation technology. And most important of them all was their decision to make the 707. So more on that in the next slide. Now you would need to put yourself in the shoes of Boeing's management team in the early 1950s. Their engineers had the idea to build a large jet aircraft for the commercial market. The company had virtually no presence in the commercial market, and the earlier commercial attempts had been full failures. So they've been building aircrafts primarily for the military, and their revenue, or 4/5 of their business, comes from the Air Force. Now the rival believes in the propeller-driven planes that will continue to dominate the commercial market, which is true, but only for a limited period of time. So what they did was the company had they had painful layoffs from about 51,000 employees to 7,500 after the Second World War concluded. They had very low cash, but they defied the odds and they committed to the goal of establishing themselves as a major player in the commercial aircraft industry. They built the jet, they called it the 707, and they brought the commercial world into the jet age. In contrast, if you look, the competitor, they made the decision to stick with piston propellers, and they waited and they saw Boeing fly right past them, and they seized dominant control of the commercial market. Even as late as 1960, I think, I'm not sure, I think 1950, 1959 or 1960, the year according to Business Week, the airlines fell all over each other in their rush to replace piston planes. And Douglas still did not have a jet ready for market. So perhaps you're thinking that, Boeing might just have been lucky. It looks smart in retrospect, but it could have been wrong. That's a good point, but we are inclined to agree, except for one thing. Boeing has a long and consistent history of committing itself to big goals and big challenges. If you look, as far as back as the early 1930s, you'll see that their behavior is behavior at Boeing when it sets the goal of becoming a major force in the military aircraft market and their military planes. So Boeing and its BHAGs. BHAG is if you had to define BHAG in the commercial market or in the business world, BHAG is nothing but the big, hairy, audacious goals that certain firms have. To define BHAG better, I'd like to quote. I had one example of President Kennedy in the, I believe it was in the 1960s. So Kennedy's goal was to reach. He could have very easily said that, let's just have our space program running the way it's running and let's not look too far beyond. But his goal was to put a man on the moon and return him safely back to the earth. So return him safely back. So that's a BHAG, and that's one example of a BHAG. So a lot of firms have their BHAGs in place. It doesn't necessarily mean that they uh, achieve their target, but they do have it in place. So Boeing has had its BHAG in place, and that's one of the reasons why it has flourished. I'm quoting what they've said. They've said that our vision is to be on the leading edge of aviation, of being pioneers. One of their decision, which was you can consider it to be a BHAG, is to go forward with the 747 jumbo jet, a decision that nearly killed the company. I'd actually tell you one instance of what happened when they built the 747. The engineer, the product manager asked the engineers about the return on investment. So the engineers weren't too sure about what the return on investment would be, and he had his he didn't know what to say back. So they weren't sure about the return on investment on this thing, but they were very sure about what they were building would have a long term return and not just over a short term of like 5 or 10 years. So all companies have goals. There's a huge difference between merely having a goal and becoming committed to a huge daunting challenge like a big mountain to climb. A BHAG engages people. It reaches out and grabs them in the gut. It is tangible, it is energizing, and it's highly focused. So people get it right away. You don't have to explain, and you don't have to give long presentations or long uh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
You
So
can wind it up, Smish, you
sure.
can wind it up
Excellent.
because we would like to have one more presentation, if possible.
Uh,
I guess the time is extremely.
we've spoken a lot about what Boeing has done right over the years, which has cemented its place in the industry. But recently, Boeing has had a few failures, and this was in the form of the 737 Max. It took its first flight on the 29th of January 2016, and it was certified by the US Federal Aviation Administration. It suffered a recurring failure in the maneuvering characteristics augmentation system, which led to two fatal accidents and the death of 346 people. Personally, I felt that they should have stopped the development of the 737 Max purely on the basis of moral and human reasons. You cannot develop something for not for profiteering or development and forget humanity in the process. The 737 MAX was subsequently grounded worldwide from March 2019 to November 2020, and they were charged with fraud, and they had to pay around, I think, $3 billion in compensation. In November 2020, the FFA cleared the MAX again to resume services. Boeing plans to replace the 737 by a new airplane by 2030, supposedly in the next 7 to 8 years. One that would use composite materials and be slightly bigger and have new engines. So as of now, it's functional. Around 180, I think 180 countries have cleared it for work, and as of now, it's functional. So that's all on Boeing, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Nice presentation. A lot of information actually. One key question that I have is based on the data that you have. I guess you mentioned that they are the largest. Actually, I guess two things. One is they are the largest aero company, aircraft company, and the largest contractors in defense sector. Does that apply in the commercial segment also? That is, if you look at commercial airliners alone, is Boeing the largest one?
No, sir. This is in the sense of manufacturing. They are the largest manufacturers of this aerospace systems. But in the commercial sense,
sorry, that's what I'm asking. Actually, in commercial airliners also, if you just look at commercial airliners alone, are they the largest manufacturers or?
so as of now, that's what the data
Or is
says.
it just, or is it the combined one? Is it the combined volume? That is defense plus commercial.
Yes, sir. It's the combined one. Yes, the defense. Yes.
Okay. And also, in fact, one thing that we should notice is that Boeing, as you have listed the years and the events, etc., is truly reflective of how the US aviation industry itself evolved, right from the time of World War I all through
Yes.
World War II and then till the recent years. So
Yes.
this is a company which actually reflects the growth of that nation's evolution of aviation business actually as a whole.
Exactly.
I mean aircraft manufacturer. So it's very important from that perspective.
Yes, sir.
One suggestion again is that if you can show the present, share that once again. That 707 slide is busy with a lot of text. So as I mentioned in the morning, please try to avoid these ones which don't look good in any presentation. That is to have a lot of running text. I guess the one particularly busy slide was the one with in which you had details about that 707. So try to keep points, not running text as it.
I tried to keep it
So
short,
just keep
but
that.
I didn't want to make it shorter.
Good actually, so it has to be short. So you can just put points and then rest you can say, you can just verbally explain, but you don't have because otherwise it doesn't give the feel of a presentation if you put too much of running text like written paragraphs. It doesn't look good in any presentation. So just keep that in mind. Okay, one more. I guess we are sort of running out of time, so I would request team 4 to present in the next class tomorrow first session, right? Let's not rush that through the remaining time today. Just one more point I wanted to mention about this was trying to all right. I guess I didn't see that in your this one. It was, if I remember correctly, it was 707. Yeah, you mentioned about some of the accidents and issues that it faced, and at some point of time, I guess it was being described as a flying coffin. Probably you would have heard of that. So the criticism was so harsh that it was called. I guess it was 707. I'm sorry, I may mistake it. Probably 737. I don't remember. Anyway, 737, I guess, was at some point of time being described as flying coffin, which was so actually a really bad remark for the company.
Yes, sir. I think we'll come across that. Okay, sir. We'll read about it.
Yeah. That's it. Okay, so that's all. Otherwise, the presentation had a lot of information there. Thank you. So I guess we'll. Okay. Others have any questions, comments? They can raise. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Can we also present it today itself?
Why
Team
don't you
four.
do it tomorrow? Why don't you do it tomorrow? Is a problem?
It'll get over. We have 6 more minutes, no, sir.
Fine. Okay, carry on. No problem. Then do that. No issue.
Okay.
You share
Okay.
it and take
Yes.
it. No
Shashank will start.
problem. Put it on slideshow. Okay. On slideshow, please. Yeah, great.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Team 4, and our topic was Concorde, the first supersonic jetliner. The first flight occurred in 1969, and it was jointly developed and manufactured by SAT Aviation and British Aircraft Corporation. And the estimated cost was around 70 million euros, whereas the actual cost that was spent on this project was between 1.5 to 2.1 billion euros. There were 20 models built, and six of them were prototypes. So the shown image is the design of the aircraft, the initial aircraft, and the design details are number of crew members required was 3. Length was 61.6 meters, and wingspan was 25.6 meters. The wing was a double delta shaped wing, and its area was around 358.25 meters square. Its maximum takeoff weight was 1,85,070 kgs. Its fuel capacity was 95,680 kgs, and the engines used were Rolls-Royce 593 MK 610 turbojets, and it produced 140 kilonewton thrust and 169.3 kilonewton thrust with using afterburner. The performance parameters are as listed. The maximum speed achieved was 1354 miles per hour, and in Mach it's Mach 2.04, and it was limited due to temperature issues of the flight material. The cruise speed was 1341 miles per hour. The maximum range was 4,488 miles, and the fuel consumption was 13.2 kg per kilometer. And I give it to Raj.
Thank you, Shashank. So I'll take over the historical operations of the Concorde aircraft. So it started at 1962 when a treaty was signed between both the organizations of British and France. They decided to share the cost and risk that would be during the production of the Concorde aircraft. So in 1969, the first flight took off. That was a test flight, and it was successful. And even before the inauguration of the Concorde aircraft in 1973, the Concorde aircraft was used for the solar eclipse mission, which they modified, and they had put observation instruments on the rooftop, which till date is the longest solar eclipse observation by the aircraft, which was 74 minutes. And in 1973 was the inauguration for the Concorde aircraft. To start the operations in 1976, 1976, the first passenger flight took off from London to Bahrain. It was the British Airways. Next slide, please. So in 2000, July 25th, a major accident had taken place where the aircraft took off from the Paris on to New York. Just after the takeoff, debris burst from the tire and caused fuel tank to rupture, because of which it burst into flames and the aircraft crashed into a small hotel. So, which killed everyone on the board, including the crew members. So that was a major accident that taken place. Even before 2000, there were small, minute accidents which didn't cause deaths, but they were minute. And this was a major accident that had taken place in 2000. And the aircraft finally retired in 2003, October 24th. And that was the end for the Concorde aircraft. And few major factors for the decline of aircraft was majorly the crash that taken place in 2000, because of which the passengers were not willing to travel using this aircraft. And the maintenance cost of the aircraft also was high. And since our aircraft had started in 1976, and the avionic components and all the internal parts were outdated compared to the Boeing 747, because of which it caused the aircraft to retire soon. And one more major factor is that since it's a supersonic aircraft, it causes a sonic boom, which would cause high amount of noise pollution, and it also causes heating effects. And finally, I'd like to conclude, even after spending £2 billion for the manufacturing of this aircraft and charging passengers, the cost to the ticket also was too high. Even after that, this aircraft has never made profit. It was not a profitable business, and it was in loss only, because the production cost drastically increased to £2 billion. So, well, it was not a business, but it was a great achievement for the aerospace industry. So that's all from our side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good presentation. Did you mention which airlines did fly it?
Yes, British Airways and Air France, because those both were the major parties that signed the treaty.
Yes.
Yes.
But then I think that is sort of debatable because, yeah, I mean, it's popularly said they argue that British Airways and probably Air France also made don't know for they didn't make profits because of the obvious reasons that you mentioned.
Yes,
the pricing was very high.
Yes, sir.
For some part, people would have paid that extra fare mainly because of the prestige value associated with flying in a supersonic.
Yes, sir. The luxury they get is and a view
over a period of
passengers.
time.
Yes, sir.
Please carry on. Yeah.
The passengers flying in this aircraft can, at the topmost point, they can even see the spherical shape of the Earth. That was also a major reason. So only the rich people could afford this ticket.
Right, that's true.
Yes.
But then even for them, the saving in time, actually, if you were to put yourself in the shoes of a traveler or a rich traveler of that time, I don't know whether that was actually practically very significant amount of saving, because first of all, on land, they could not fly supersonic. So the supersonic regime itself was restricted. Moreover, so and also the time, the check-in time that you take in the airport is probably the same for any other airport, any other aircraft. So in your destination airport, where you start, you have to. I am not sure how much was Though they, of course, they used to say what having breakfast in London and lunch in Sydney or something like that, or Tokyo,
Yeah.
etc.
Yes.
But then those probably was true, but then you really don't know how much in practice how much time it could actually save. And probably these are some of the practical issues why Concorde, after its retirement in 2003, does not have a successor yet. So,
Exactly. Yes, sir.
commercial supersonic technology will probably take more time to actually be established in a real sense. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, then. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks to all of you for joining. We'll meet again tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.